Good afternoon. I saw Senator Hassan has joined us. I'm so glad to be joined by Senator Hassan to talk about the TEAM Act, the reintroduction of the TEAM Act in this Congress. We made a lot of progress in the Senate, passing it out unanimously from the Veterans Affairs Committee. I particularly want to thank my other colleagues who have joined on the bill in its initial introduction. That includes also Senator Moran, Klobuchar, Blackburn, and Baldwin, and we expect others to join. We're also hearing positive progress on the House side that we're seeking Democratic support to have a companion bill so that we can get it done in this Congress. I'm only going to talk for a few more seconds, and I'll turn it over to Maggie for some comments, and then we'll answer any of your questions. But the TEAM Act, Toxic Exposures in the American Military Act, it's really trying to put a framework in place that let us in mistakes that we made dating back to Agent Orange. We have to have the science so that we can fundamentally reform and improve healthcare and benefits to veterans who are exposed to toxic substances. We need to have additional scientific evidence or data outside of the VA so that we can work on presumptions and see the links between certain toxic exposures and diseases that we should provide care to veterans who were exposed. And even really providing a presumption framework that favors the veteran. Other things that we need to do is to focus on how we can lighten the burden. If you think about it, when a veteran is experiencing an illness, they've got so many other distractions on their mind. We should not make it difficult to get them the care that they deserve. We're doing that by trying to do earlier screening with their primary care physician through a toxic exposure questionnaire. I think that we need to even start thinking, even before they reach veteran status, thinking about when they're still active duty or reserve or in the Guard, potential exposures that we should be mindful of after they transition to veteran status. So again, I want to thank Senator Hassan for joining on this bill. Hassan, I'm sorry, Maggie.
Oh, good.
And I'm very, very optimistic that with the help of the more than 30 veteran service organizations who are part of the TEAM Coalition, and even some that are not in the coalition who have endorsed this bill or voiced support for it as recently as last week, that this is the Congress where we can get it done and do right by veterans. Maggie, I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll answer any questions they may have.
Well, Tom, thank you so much, and thanks for your leadership on this bill. It's really great also to be with so many veterans organizations on this Zoom. Thank you for everything you do to support veterans. I also want to give special recognition to our guest from New Hampshire, our adjutant for the New Hampshire VFW, Paul Lloyd. Paul is a Navy veteran. He is chair of our New Hampshire Veterans Advisory Committee. In addition to that, he's chairman for the Board of Managers at the New Hampshire Veterans Home, and he's president of the Concord, New Hampshire Veterans Council. So Paul, thank you for your service to our state and our country and everything you do for New Hampshire's veterans and for being here today. Look, veterans answered our nation's call to duty, and they have allowed the rest of us to be safe, secure, and free. And so one of our ongoing tasks is to make our country ever worthy of our veterans' service and their sacrifices. And that starts with making sure that they receive the care and support that they need and that they've earned. And in particular, we have to make sure we're addressing the health challenges that occurred as a result of their service. Unfortunately, as Senator Tillis has just talked about, we often place a huge onus on our veterans and service members, especially those who have been exposed to toxic environments while serving overseas. For example, some veterans have been exposed to toxic burn pits while stationed in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other places. And frankly, we've also seen challenges for our veterans at home. In my state of New Hampshire, members of the military who served at the Pease Air Force Base, for example, in addition, their families and people living and working in communities around that Air Force Base were exposed to drinking water contaminated by high levels of PFAS, otherwise known as forever chemicals. So I want to thank all the Granite Staters who have advocated on this important issue of toxic exposure. And I want to also recognize in particular Doris Brock for her work in bringing domestic exposure to toxins to our attention. For too long, we have seen that veterans who've been impacted by toxic exposures have had to deal with this long and difficult process in order to get much needed care. And that's why Senator Tillis and I are introducing the Toxic Exposure in the American Military Act. And we're very grateful to be joined by the colleagues that Senator Tillis listed. As Senator Tillis noted, this really is a bill that's focused on improving how veterans who are exposed to toxic substances receive their health care and benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And it expands VA healthcare for veterans who were exposed to toxic substance, establishing an independent scientific commission that would research the health effects of these toxic exposures, because obviously the VA and a commission that they start are in a much better position to do this kind of research and collect this kind of data and make sure people get the care that they need as a result than individual veterans are. So I want to thank Senator Tillis again for your work on this issue and for your work on behalf of our country's veterans. And to everybody here today, thank you so much for what you do for our veterans as well. I'm proud to be a new member of the Veterans Committee in the Senate and look forward to working with all of you as we continue to do everything we can to support our nation's veterans and in turn support and strengthen our country.
Thank you, Senator Hassan. Before we go to any questions, I also want to make sure that we pay special attention to the Wounded Warrior Project, the Military Officers Association of America, the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Retired Enlisted Association, the Independence Fund, and the New Hampshire Veterans of Foreign Wars. They've all played a very important role of us getting to this point, and now we got to work on getting it into the end zone. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Hey, this is Rose with Stars and Stripes. Should we just jump in?
Sure, Rose, go ahead.
All right, thank you for putting this together today. It's an issue I've been following closely. Are you able to talk at all about if it was just sort of bad timing or what happened last year, and then if there's anything different in the 2021 version as opposed to 2020?
Yeah, Rose, I think a part of it was trying to get everybody on the same page with the core priorities. Some of this was also working with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And it's just that we ran out of time at the end of the Congress. It was another component. There were differing opinions on the House side about what the priorities needed to be. So we've spent the intervening time to really try to get everyone to coalesce around some of the key tenets of the TEAM Act. And I think we're making good progress on the House side. You know, things move more quickly when you have that bipartisan, bicameral consensus. And I feel like we're making great headway there. That's where we're going to need the VSOs and other advocates to weigh in on this. We're considering some additional amendments, additional provisions that could be added to the underlying bill. But I believe that just took a little bit more work than we had in the last Congress. But I do believe that the work that's been expended over the past few months bodes well for where we go from here. And before we go to another question, I would like to give each of the organizations that I gave special thanks to an opportunity to make comments. And we'll start with the Wounded Warrior Project.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. I'm Alex Morosky with Wounded Warrior Project. Senator Tillis, Senator Hassan, it's great to be with you today to discuss the TEAM Act. It's a bill we strongly support to help all veterans who are exposed to toxic substances during their military service. You know, it seems like every generation of veterans has had some struggles with toxic and chemical exposures. This is both on deployment and this is on bases stateside as well, as Senator Hassan mentioned. And for the current generation of veterans, the post 9/11 generation, which I and many other people on the call today are part of, it's no different. Now, you know, as Senator Tillis mentioned, in the past, toxic exposure legislation has always been addressed conflict by conflict, exposure by exposure. What's really groundbreaking about this bill is that it would finally provide healthcare eligibility and put that process in place for VA to respond to the scientific data for all veterans of all eras who were exposed, foreign and domestic, regardless of their era location, now and in the future. And that way, veterans who've already been exposed will be covered, but we can also ensure that the next generation of veterans aren't starting from square one anymore over and over again. And I think that's what's really unique about the TEAM Act and what makes it so important. So I'll just close by once again thanking Senator Tillis and Senator Hassan for all their hard work on this important bill. And we look forward to continuing to work with you and all of our VSO partners to make sure that this important bill becomes law this year. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Senator Tillis. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for all the work up to this point. We're gonna work even harder from this point forward, but I appreciate it. Next, Military Officers Association of America.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Corey Titus. I'm the Director of Veteran Benefits at MOA. I want to thank you on behalf of our 350,000 members for the opportunity to share our support for the TEAM Act. We appreciate the effort you, your fellow senators, members of the staff, and committee staff have all put into this bill. The collaborative approach you've taken is clearly reflected in this transformative bill, and it gets to the heart of what our veterans and survivors need. The TEAM Act provides essential changes which will help the millions of service members and veterans who are exposed to toxic materials in service to our country. And really, given the protracted delays and emergence of conditions suspected to be connected to hazards like burn pits, it's clear that we must adjust our actions and our mindsets with how we approach toxic exposures. By changing the access to healthcare for those who fought in the global war on terror, the TEAM Act creates a viable avenue for veterans to seek treatment for conditions related to their service. The bill not only helps veterans today who fought in Southwest Asia, it also changes how we respond to exposures for the generations before them and for those to come. Through the TEAM Act, we will ensure past exposures similar to conditions still emerging from Agent Orange exposure will be addressed by the VA. The lifelong impact of these toxic exposures must be continually revisited, and the TEAM Act does that. The TEAM Act is, safe to say, the largest legislative step forward for the presumptive process in a quarter century. We appreciate we also appreciate the bill takes into account what VSOs like MOA, coalitions like TEAM, and the military coalition have asked for. A prime example is the bill's creation of an advisory committee to facilitate VSOs in sharing their voice on which toxic exposures are most critical and emerging for the population of exposed veterans. MOA is proud to stand alongside the TEAM coalition and all the VSOs here today in supporting this bill and is dedicated to ensuring its passage. There's a lot we must do to support the TEAM exposures both in the DoD and VA space, and the TEAM Act is a giant leap forward. So thank you, Senator. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Next would be Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate you holding this event today to highlight the issue of military toxic exposures and for allowing me to speak today on behalf of the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Appreciate you, Senator Tillis and Senator Hassan, for working hard to address this issue. It's a signature issue of post 9/11 veterans. The TEAM coalition has been working hard to ensure that toxic exposures are not something that we're going to be fighting to address a generation from now. And IAVA is actually on the Hill virtually this week with many of our members from across the country talking about this very issue. And from the conversations that we're having, I'd say about 8 and 10 of our veterans are sharing their experiences with toxic exposures, like burn pits, burning porta-john waste, contaminated water, and exhaust from diesel generators that powered our operation, just to name a few. So we look forward to working with you as we move forward on this. We appreciate that you have our backs. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Next up, Veterans of Foreign Wars.
Good afternoon. I'm Christina Keenan, Associate Director of the National Legislative Service for the Veterans of Foreign Wars. During the last century, veterans returned home from war with an array of illnesses associated with the toxic exposures and environmental hazards they encountered in service. Today is no different, and unfortunately, toxic exposure has become synonymous with military service. The VFW called upon Congress to work in a bipartisan manner with veteran service organizations to develop a comprehensive solution to toxic exposures. We asked, and you heard us. The Toxic Exposure in the American Military Act, the TEAM Act, aligns directly with the VFW's priorities. To establish an independent commission to require VA to enter into an agreement with the national academies, to require VA to respond to scientific findings and grant presumptive service connection when warranted. The TEAM Act would establish a comprehensive approach, a comprehensive framework to address past, present, and future toxic exposures, both domestic and abroad. We believe this legislation will take care of a significant number of veterans and will prevent us from having to come back to Congress again and again. VFW thanks Senators Tillis and Hassan for reintroducing this important legislation to provide America's veterans with the care and benefits they need. We look forward to working with you, the TEAM Coalition, and everyone here together to pass the TEAM Act. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next is the Retired Enlisted Association.
You're on mute. You're on mute, ma'am.
We'll come back to her.
Nope,
There we go.
Matter.
You got it.
I apologize. Senator Tillis and Senator Hassan, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Deborah Olshig. I serve as Vice President and Legislative Chair for the Enlisted Association. I want to echo what my fellow partners have said today. Burn pits, toxic exposure, and Agent Orange have unfortunately affected our service members in the past and for the future. My son-in-law served in Afghanistan and on his second deployment lived 10 feet from burn pits and had a fellow Marine die from liver cancer from these burn pits. It is very personal for me. In the first few hours of sending our call to action alerts, we received hundreds and then thousands of comments from people across the country wanting this to be addressed and have this act passed. We want to thank Senator Tillis and Senator Hassan again for reintroducing this bill today. We look forward to working with you in the future to pass this act in the 117th Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, the Independence Fund.
Thank you very much, Senators. I really do appreciate your hard work on getting this bill up and running. We look forward to working with you in order to be able to get it passed in the Senate and then into the House and signed by the President. The Independence Fund serves predominantly catastrophically disabled veterans for whom toxic exposure subsequent effects can really complicate their care. You already have the issues of complex polytrauma and traumatic brain injury, along with the amputations and burns that oftentimes come with catastrophically wounded veterans. But when you then mix in the toxic exposure elements, it can make their healthcare very difficult. The presumptive conditions that the TEAM Act will provide will help alleviate that, make that healthcare more seamless and quicker to be delivered. As a North Carolina-based veteran service organization with offices in Washington, D.C. and Nashville and California, we really want to thank our home state senator, Senator Tillis, for taking the lead on this, and for all the other senators that are working so hard, including Senator Hassan. So thank you very much. Good luck, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And from New Hampshire, Veterans of Foreign Wars.
Good afternoon, Senator Tillis, Senator Hassan. Thank you for reintroducing this bill. It's been a long time coming. Hopefully when this is complete, it will make it easier and smoother for our veterans, affected veterans, to get the help they need. Here in New Hampshire, we personally know folks that are affected by the toxic exposures from foreign grounds to back here in New Hampshire at Pease, and continue to fight to get the help and assistance for treatment that they need. We look forward to helping you get this bill across the finish line. And again, thank you for reintroducing this bill.
Thank you. Now, if we have any other further questions, we'll be willing to field them. Just unmute your mic and we'll manage any conflicts if there are any.
Senator Tillis, if I may, this is Abby Bennett with CBS Radio. I wanted to ask you, as you've had discussions with VA more recently under our new administration and also with the House, what's your sense of the support moving forward with this bill?
I think we're going to generally get support. I believe in the last administration, the real question was making sure that when we provide all of the authorities under the TEAM Act, is that we also make sure that it's properly funded. And that's what we'll continue to work on with our colleagues in the Senate and the House. But I really believe that the reason we weren't able to get it done in the last Congress had more to do with needing more runway to get that bipartisan, bicameral consensus here. I think that the past administration would have accepted it. And we have very high expectations that the Biden administration will as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senators, this is Colin Browder of WRAL TV in Raleigh. We've done stories on blue water sailors in Vietnam and also those service members who helped clean up from atomic bomb testing. And there was some conflict over the scientific data linking their exposure to their illnesses. What would this legislation do for them?
Colin, thank you. I think probably the most important aspect related to your question is the independent commission. I first got exposed to bad choice of words. I first got engaged in the toxic exposures issue when I came here to the Senate 6 years ago with the toxic substances down at Camp Lejeune. And we were working a lot with data that we had gotten from independent sources, scientific sources, and it conflicted somewhat with data. And this crossed two administrations with the VA. So that's why we want to establish an independent commission. We want to invite independent scientific data that makes that process of presumptions move more quickly. And we'll be happy to send you a summary of the bill, but that independent commission and the reliance on external experts to give us the data that we need to create the link, I think is one of the most important aspects of the bill.
Yeah, and I would just second that. It's critically important that we bring the best science we can to establish these connections. Obviously, individual veterans would have a really difficult time doing this, but the Veterans Affairs and the scientific community can come together and do that. The other thing that I think is really important is once the connection is established, because the TEAM Act would also ensure that the VA keeps track of who was stationed where and what kind of exposures they may have had. It will help develop an expertise within the VA for treatment as well. And that's the other piece of this. We want to make sure that our veterans are getting the most up-to-date treatment for evolving and emerging conditions resulting from their service, and in this case, from toxic exposure. By bringing in the scientific community this way, with the full force of the United States government behind it, we really have an opportunity to take major steps forward in the treatment for these conditions too. And I think that's going to be an important aspect of the long-term effect here.
Thank you, Colin. Any other questions?
This is Rose. If I could just jump back in again. I wanted to just ask again if there was any major differences between last year and this year's introduction of the bill or context of the bill.
Fundamentally the same bill, and it's something that's been worked on and built on for all of last Congress. And again, I mentioned earlier, Rose, there are some suggestions that have come up, and we're willing to look at those, provided that we keep the foundation of the TEAM Act in place and that we continue to garner the support of over 30 BSOs who support the bill in its current form. But I think if you were to look at it, it's virtually the same baseline bill, maybe some minor edits, but that's why I'm so confident that we have the opportunity to get it done in this Congress.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that fully for me. I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
If I could add just one more, and I missed the very start of this and I apologize, but what would you say to our viewers, to veterans? What is the main takeaway from this particular piece of legislation?
That we don't want to repeat the mistakes of Agent Orange. Burn pits have oftentimes been characterized by myself and my colleagues. If we don't get it right, it could be our next Agent Orange. If you think about veterans who were exposed in the Vietnam era, they waited decades before some of the presumptions in healthcare could be provided. And sadly, it was after many of them may have succumbed to illnesses that were ultimately related to exposure to Agent Orange. So what we want to do here, burn pits is the issue on top of mind, but we really want to get to a point to where it's on the independent commission, the relationship with the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine that will be established between the VA to very quickly have a science-based approach to providing presumptions for veterans. So I think, call it that having this have an independent commission, having a formalized agreement with outside scientists and doctors to quickly study and identify or not a linkage to a toxic substance is something that's vastly different than anything that's ever existed within the VA. And I really hope that we build on this to look even further upstream. There's no reason why we can't leverage this framework to look while you're in active service in the reserves or in the National Guard, to be able to capture information to where ultimately I would like to be able to identify a potential risk before any veteran has any evidence of any illness. I think that we can do that, and this is laying the framework for doing that.
I just would add that those who serve and our veterans deserve and have earned the best science and the best care that the United States of America can provide to them. They have sacrificed for us. This is the minimum of what we can do in return. And so I'm a very enthusiastic co-sponsor with Senator Tillis, because it is so critically important that we not only express our gratitude to veterans, but that we stand up for them and fight for them when they need us. And that's what this bill is about.
And incidentally, just on another note, I want to thank the VSOs who are constantly supporting veterans who are going through this complex process. We do casework in our office. I know that Senator Hassan does, but I also know that these VSOs are having to work through a very complex subject, and oftentimes frustrating for someone who has an illness that they believe is linked to a toxic exposure. So thanks to all the VSOs for the work you're doing in the Team Coalition and those who support the TEAM Act. But I'm hoping that your casework will go down once we ratify this bill, so you can find the million other reasons why you need to focus on serving our veterans. Well, with that, if there are no other questions, again, Senator Hassan, I want to thank you for coming on to the bill. You're a welcome addition to the Veterans Affairs Committee. And I'll be honest with you all, I can't wait until we're doing this in person again. And I hope that that's on fairly short order. But in the meantime, thank you all for your service. And Senator Hassan, I'll pass it over to you for a final comment.
Senator Tillis, thank you so much. Thank you for your leadership on this bill. Again, I'm very honored to be a new member of the Senate Veteran Affairs Committee, and I look forward to working with all of you, to all of the VSOs on this Zoom and throughout the country. Thank you for what you do too. And at the end of the day, again, this is about honoring those and fighting for those who have fought for and protected our freedoms. So thanks everybody, and thanks again, Tom.
Thank you. For the veterans on the call, thank you for your service, and God bless.